Welcome back to another SPR Sports News Podcast. My name is Sean. It's been a while. Personal life things going on, a lot of stuff at the same time. So, taking about a 2 week hiatus. This is going to be a quick one. It's going to be put up on Friday or Saturday. And then we're going to get back to it hopefully on Tuesdays or Wednesdays religiously. Things have slowed down. No, this podcast isn't done with. Just like everyone else, life happens, things slow down. So let's get right into it. This is going to be a short one, but I just want to go into some stuff real quick. The WBC, the World Baseball Classic, has started up. I'm doing this on a Friday where Japan has already played at the first thing in the morning, and they won against the Chinese Taipei 13-0. Japan looks just like what we expected. They're either going to be first or second place in this whole thing. USA plays tonight. So we get to see them. They're a 9.5 run favorite, which is insane. We get to see that. As I'm doing this right now, Great Britain and Mexico are in a hell date, and Mexico is a heavy favorite in that game. And this is really exciting. I love baseball. It's my favorite sport. MMA is right up there too. Those are my 1-2. Then comes things like football and others, but those are my 1-2. So both of them going at the same time. This is honestly my favorite time of year. Some people are going to be like, oh, but there's no football. Basketball's still a little bit before postseason. Same thing with hockey. It's like, yeah, but the whole thing of the start of a new baseball season, usually hearing some of the big events, the International Fight Week, and usually right before, usually massive events in MMA, you start getting announcements of them about now or in the next few weeks. So that's always why it's such a big deal for me this time of year. So World Baseball Classic looks like it's going to be awesome. I do believe it's going to end up being Japan versus USA. Dominican Republic is nothing. Just act like they're not anything. They're pretty goddamn good team over there. And there might be a surprising team around there. We'll see. All right, in the UFC, Sean Strickland ended up beating Fluffy Hernandez, which that was Fluffy's possible worst matchup. Against Kamzat, at least he knew the grappling would have been coming, and he could have used grappling, and we could have seen the exchanges. Against DeRitter, I think Fluffy would have done really well because DeRitter would have welcomed grappling, and Fluffy is a very good pressure wrestler / BJJ specialist. But Sean Strickland has one of the best wrestling defenses I have ever seen. He somehow stuffs everyone, and he even will toss in takedowns himself if need be. But it seemed like this fight, he was looking for a kill, and he got it. He wasn't just throwing 1-2s and a teep kick. He was actually getting away from the teep kick, and his coach had to tell him to go back into it and rip him to the body a little bit more. And he just found the finish, and he was actually throwing a little harder. The last time I've seen Sean Strickland actually throw like this, where he was wanting to throw for power and knockout in a way, was against Imavov, and that was before he even got the chance to go against Israel Adesanya and win the belt. When he won the belt against Israel Adesanya, he was doing a lot of the teep kick 1-2, 1-2, but constant in the Philly shell. He went for the kill the one time he did hurt Adesanya, but that was with a punch, just a 1-2. So Brendan Moreno lost again. I do think he's at the end of his career. He's definitely, it was definitely a close fight, but I did believe he lost. And does he want to keep taking damage? Like, he's not going to be a title challenger again. He's on the older side. Yes, they could keep using him for the big Mexican events, and he was no longer going to be the top guy for the Mexican events, in my opinion. They're going to start using other names, and he's going to start slipping down. I think it might be time for him to think about it. He has the most cage time in flyweight history. He's had a Hall of Fame type career. I don't think he needs to do more. Obviously, if he believes he needs to do more for money and whatnot, and he loves to do it, good for him. But try to look for fights that aren't as damaging. So maybe just go against some grapplers, and if you get submitted, you get submitted. Like, don't go against some heavy strikers. But that's my opinion on that. Then we're going to go into the UFC 326 card, Max Holloway versus Charles Oliveira, the BMF belt. That fight is really difficult. But I think the biggest thing is Charles Oliveira getting the takedowns. Max Holloway doesn't get taken down. He's another guy that has top-tier takedown defense. There was a time, if you have to go back in time on this, back in like 2017, 2018, when Khabib won the belt and he was supposed to fight Tony Ferguson, and then Tony Ferguson blew out his knee, and then they're going to put in Max Holloway to fight for the belt. And then Max Holloway had a bad weight cut, and something went on, and he got pulled, and they did Ally Quinta versus Khabib. People actually believed, because Max Holloway was the champion at 145, and he was doing so damn well at takedown defense, no one could take him down. But he wasn't going against a lot of grapplers, that he stood a chance against Khabib. If we look at it now, we'd all be like, yeah, that wouldn't happen. But if you go back to that time, people believe that. People need to remember, Max Holloway has insane takedown defense. I'm not saying he would have done anything to Khabib. I'm just saying now we relate it today. Max is just as good, if not better, than he was. He hasn't lost a step at all. Charles Oliveira is getting a little chinny. He's been the second most finished fighter in UFC history. The only one that has been finished more than him is Andrei Arlovski, but that's heavyweight too, and he's a smaller heavyweight. Also a Hall of Famer in my eyes. A good champion, early 2000s, and then he fought all the way into the 2020s. Beast. So Charles has to get the takedown, which he's not known for the wrestling as much as he is for the BJJ. And he is known for hurting you and then jumping on and getting the neck or getting a triangle. And sometimes he's gotten some arm submissions. Max Holloway has been submitted once in his career, and that was by Dustin Poirier, and that was his UFC debut many years ago. Yes, these two have fought before. Max Holloway won by TKO. Some sort of esophagus injury happened to Charles Oliveira. Nothing ever came out exactly what happened, but that's what it was stated. And this was 11 years ago. So you can't really take anything from that fight. In my opinion, 11 years you can't. You can't. If it was like 3 years, 4 years, even 5, maybe. But 11, no, you can't take anything from that fight. So Max Holloway, I think, will keep the fight standing, and I don't think is going to get clipped. So that's where I'm going to be going with Max Holloway. I do think he will get the finish. He's going to keep landing on Charles. He's going to get knocked down 3 or 4 times in this fight. Max is not going to knock him unconscious on the first time, but he's going to put him on his ass. He's going to put him on his ass a second time. This is going to be like a 3 or 4 time knockdown until Max decides, all right, it's time for the kill, and then gets to finish in like the 4th round. That's my opinion. Max Holloway, TKO, 4th round finish. Caio Brilleaux versus Renier de Ridder. I like this fight. Both coming off a loss. De Ridder, he had some health issues going into last fight, and I do believe that. I don't believe he just has a weak gas tank. He fights really drunken monkey style fighter. If you haven't watched him, he fights like he's drunk. It is amazing. In my opinion, it's amazing. Some people hate it. I'm like, dude, if it works, it works. And Caio Brilleaux, he took the fight on. He didn't take the fight on short notice, but he cut weight 2 weeks prior to make 185 to be the backup of, I think it was, who was it? It was Duplessis and Khamzat Chimaev. And then 2 weeks later, he was fighting Imavov, and he had to cut the weight again. I do believe if you watched Imavov versus Caio fight, Caio looked really worn down. More worn down than he's ever looked. Not taking anything away from Imavov, but I don't think that was the Caio that has gone on the run to get himself to be a number 1 type contender fighter. This fight has been announced for a while. They've been training. I think we're going to get healthier versions of both of these fighters, and this is going to make for a really good fight. This is only 3 rounds. I do believe Caio has the edge here if he doesn't get destroyed by knees to the body. Caio doesn't get taken down. I haven't seen anyone taking him down yet. And I think Caio will piece up the Ridder, and I believe a 3rd round KO/TKO for Caio Brilleaux will happen. Rob Font versus Raul Rosas Jr. I think this is a good time to have this fight. Rob Font is in the top 15. He is on the older side. He is starting to look slower. His grappling is starting to look weaker. This is a good time to put Raul Rosas Jr. in there with a guy with name value that is a top 15 guy. Could Rob Font still stuff takedowns and piece him up? Yes. Could he still scramble? And then we can see Rojas Jr. get exhausted. Of course we can. I do think Rojas has to either pace himself and learn that. That's something we haven't really seen is the pacing, or he has to go for the finish quickly. Because Rob Font is not someone you really just get in and get out of there. But we'll see. I do want to stick with the young gun on this one, but if there was going to be an underdog winning right now at those 3 fights, I do believe Rob Font's the one. I favor Rob Font beating Rojas Jr. over Charles Oliveira beating Max Holloway. That's my opinion. There is holes in Rojas Jr.'s game, and this is the best fighter he's gone against by far. All right, the next fight, Drew Dober versus Michael Johnson. Wow. This is a tough fight. I believe Drew Dober is actually favored, if I'm correct, and I don't agree with that. I think Michael Johnson, I understand he's like 40 years old. He has the better hand speed. He's more experienced. Well, they're actually both gone against killers. They've both gone against killers. I understand Drew Dober has more the power, the brawl style, but Michael Johnson, he's one of these fighters that he wins against these fights that it looks like he's on his way out and then he wins. Like, this is one I feel Michael Johnson should win. If you do want a funny stat, this is one I heard from Michael Johnson on one of the embeddeds. He was talking about, and he even said it to Drew Dober. He's like, man, don't make me a statistic. And then he's like, what do you mean? He's like, the last 4 black fighters you fought, you've knocked out. If we want to go with that, Drew Dober should knock out Michael Johnson and make it a crazy statistic. But I really don't think that's what's going to happen. I think Michael Johnson's going to piece up Drew Dober. I think this fight, if it goes 3 rounds, will be extremely exciting because these two are just going to throw. It's going to be in the face throwing. Are these guys that are going to be contending for titles? No. Is this one of those fights you just toss on a card to make it better? Yes. That's all this fight is. Drew Dober's not fighting for a title. Michael Johnson is already 40 years old. It's not happening, but it's a fight that's just fun on paper. If I have to pick one, it'd be Michael Johnson, but you never know. The statistic, the Drew Dober statistic that Michael Johnson says could happen. Wow, this main card's actually pretty sick. People were kind of like, this fight's not that great. I don't know what they're talking about. So we got Gregory Rodriguez, RoboCop versus Bruno Ferreira. Bruno Ferreira started as a heavyweight, and Gregory Rodriguez was a light heavyweight at one point. Just want to put that out there. So these are 2 big boys, 2 big Brazilian boys. Gregory Rodriguez looks like he's been through war. Like, he looks like he's 45 years old, but he's like 30. I'm not even joking. Gregory Rodriguez is 30 at the oldest. I think that, in my opinion, I like Gregory Rodriguez in this, but I believe this is actually a rematch. They fought each other, but Bruno Ferreira being the Hulk, he's just like this stocky guy that has crazy power. Regardless, it's under 1.5 rounds. This fight, someone's going out cold. That's my thing with this fight. Bruno Ferreira is a little shorter, stocky as all fucking hell, strong as hell. He can grapple. Gregory Rodriguez, beyond powerful. But he can, if he gets hurt, he does wear down very quickly, as we saw in the Jared Cannonier fight. Jared Cannonier actually eventually survived RoboCop and then hurt him, and then it's like the wind went out of his sails. So it's a tough one, and Bruno Ferreira doesn't really get finished either. Both of them have incredible records too. So, well, Gregory Rodriguez is not as incredible, but I wonder if Bruno Ferreira's. I haven't looked at the odds on this one, so I actually have no idea who's the favorite. If I had to pick, I would say it would have to be Bruno Ferreira would be the favorite, but I could definitely see Gregory Rodriguez getting a finish here also. Yeah, I'm going to. Oh, who am I picking? You know what? I'm actually going to stick with Bruno Ferreira just because he has that. He could hurt him, maybe get him to the ground and hurt him a little bit, and they could take the wind out of Gregory Rodriguez's sails. As much as I really do like RoboCop a lot, But this is another fight that's just really fun. It should be a finish. I'm just going to mention one or two things on the prelims, and that will be it for me. I am going to say Ricky Turcios versus Alberto Montes should be a really fun fight, fast-paced fight. Ricky Turcios is basically chaotic and uses his cardio. Alberto Montes is a damn good fighter, and I think this is where they're trying to let him just have a big ass moment against Ricky Turcios. And then Dante Johnson, he got in the UFC, if I'm correct, as a heavyweight, and then he went down to light heavyweight, and now he's a middleweight. Or was he a light? Yeah, no, he got in the contender series, and he was a heavyweight, and then he immediately started cutting weight, and so he fought one time, and that was against Dumas. How was that? That was a submission. Yeah, and now he's going up against Cody Garbrandt, which he should dominate. Dante Johnson's so fast on the feet. He has decent ground game. I think he knocks out Cody Garbrandt. I like Dante Johnson. I remember watching him on a contender series, and I was like, damn, he's crazy quick for a heavyweight, but he's short as hell. But I mean, he immediately dropped down in size, like into weight, and good for him. Cody Garbrandt, if you lose here, please retire. Like, he's already said stuff like, "Oh, he feels the best he's has felt," and that's like, "Oh Jesus, you're delusional." Yeah, I don't know. They're going. Zhao Long he's good. It is definitely a winnable fight for Cody Garbrandt, not Cody Garbrandt, or Cody Garbrandt. Sorry, but I don't know. I just not a big fan of that. I would I'd prefer Cody retire a couple fights ago and keep his record somewhat clean, but he's just fought way too long. His chin turned to glass, and then he's become more of a ticky tacky fighter instead of a big time big time moment fighter that he once was. It does suck that his jaw got cracked by someone that was on EPOs, but it is the game they play. That's all I'm going to talk about for this UFC fight card. I will go over it and maybe make up who each person should fight next. I will go over another topic or two in the fight world real quick. It does seem like Tom Aspinall's eye surgery went well, and it does seem like he just got a new manager, and he's a boxing manager, and it seems like Dana has said this upcoming week he will be announcing everything for the UFC White House card. So I'm wondering if Tom is getting stripped or if it's going to be an interim belt. But Alex Pereira is moving up to heavyweight, and I don't believe it's going to be against John Jones. I do believe it will be for the interim championship, and it will be against Cyril Gane and Alex Pereira. I wonder how Tom Aspinall does in this situation where he's going to have to sit on the shelf even longer, and they're going to wait till late June for that fight. So he's going to have to wait to early, like legitimately October the earliest. I would like to hear that he's okay and he's fighting at the White House, but I just don't think that's happening. Another thing is Dana White unfortunately, has his mind elsewhere other than UFC. He's gotten to the Zuffa boxing. He's always wanted to get into boxing. There's no doubt about that. He gets a boxer that most people have never heard of, and he has paid him $15 million for one fight. And that's a problem because, to be honest, I didn't know who this boxer was. I could name probably about 15 to 20 boxers that are current off the top of my head, and he was not one of them. And all of a sudden, this guy's getting paid $15 million. You know how many guys currently in the UFC gets paid $15 million before points for pay-per-view points that no longer exist? You want to know how many? 0. No one makes that money. John Jones was making 8 to 10. Ilya and Islam will probably make close to like 8 to 10 also. None of them are making $15 million. I'm not really talking about Conor McGregor because Conor's not fighting. I'm talking current that's still technically either in the testing pool, like on the roster. Conor has said like he is waiting for a contract, that he's whatever the case is. I don't know. It might be him just trying to stay relevant, but I still think that's a really big slap in the face. And you can see with a lot of the UFC fighters, even Sean O'Malley, one of the biggest stars that makes one of the most biggest paychecks of the UFC fighters. He's even looking at it like Dana's looking to grind, and he feels like he's done everything he can with it. It feels like it's easy for the UFC stuff, so now he's doing something else to really work and grind. And unfortunately, it's now taking a slap in the face of the UFC. So you're willing to toss $15 million for a boxer. And after Dana has said many times that they're overpaying, there's no one's watching that much to make this much money. It doesn't make any sense. And what's the first thing he does? He pays $15 million to a guy that most of us have never heard of. There's going to be someone that's listening and it's going to be like, oh, I know who that guy is. And it's like, good for you. Legitimately. You must be way more into boxing than I am. And to be honest, I'm not crazy into boxing. Legitimately, I don't know half the champions. I know some of the better contenders over some of the champions. The sad thing is, if you think of boxing today, you think of the most famous boxers today that is under WBC banner. Top 10 most famous boxers currently, Jake Paul's one of them. And Logan Paul might be one of them. Isn't that crazy? Even though Logan Paul's not under WBC banner, I don't believe. But Jake Paul is, which is pretty upsetting, isn't it? You would think this guy that has had legitimately 2 legitimate fights that you would count under a WBC banner, being Tommy Fury and Anthony Joshua. Everything else has been against like UFC fighters and other stuff like that. That's just, they wouldn't be under the WBC banner. World Boxing Championship, if people didn't know. It's just sad that like he's top 10 and good for him. Like he's the only legitimately, I think boxing would be even worse if it wasn't for Jake Paul. Because now he brings up names like some of the other like I didn't know some of the names that he's been calling out. And then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, he's calling out some legit guys. And so I do think that this is really bad slap in the face for the UFC fighters, what Dana White did. And to be honest, I hope Zuffa boxing just busts just so UFC could be the priority because this is actually a bad look for the UFC. It looks like, hey, this is my monopoly until someone shows that I have to up my money. I'm not going to. And I have to up my money now as a boxing organization because of these other boxing organizations. That's what it looks like. And that's kind of sad. It really is because you're basically saying, hey, you guys aren't going anywhere because you're not going to get paid like that. So screw you. All right. And the last thing I want to talk about is when it comes to the UFC world and MMA world is Francis Ngannou is a free agent. The PFL has finally cut ties with him. Could we see him back in the UFC? Him and Dana don't get along, but I'm telling you, the heavyweight division needs help. We could have a possible Alex Pereira, Francis Ngannou, a John Jones, Francis Ngannou, Tom Aspinall, Francis Ngannou matchups. Francis Ngannou, if I am correct, is 39 years old. And so he is older, but at the same point, when it comes to heavyweights and light heavyweights, you can be a little bit older. Definitely the heavyweights. We've had multiple champions in heavyweights that have actually been at the age of 40 or older. So it's not as crazy for him. And on top of it, Francis has always been in insane shape. And his power ain't going anywhere. Do I think he'll be back in the UFC? I would say like a 75% chance he will end up fighting again in UFC. If he doesn't retire. If he decides to retire, then fine. But if he doesn't retire and he wants to fight again, I say 75% chance he ends up back up in the UFC because it's at the end of the day, Paramount will even say something to Dana. Be like, yo, this is something we want to see. Get him in there. And guess what? Dana will, even if he doesn't like the guy, will be like, all right, that's fine. So that is everything with the UFC. This is a shorter episode. I'll go over what's going on in a couple days with the World Baseball Classic, how the first couple games are going. I'm going to try to get another episode out on Tuesday or Wednesday. Then I'm going to try to get a set schedule. Things have gotten a little easier over here, so we'll get back on the schedule. No, this podcast ain't going anywhere. There's just life happens. Move, other things happening. So time to get back on track, talk about some sports. Best time of year for me coming up here with baseball and UFC. Until next time, this has been SPR Sports News Podcast. Talk to you later.